Well, this was a really strategic point of land. That's one reason why the bombardment here was not just a historical footnote, but really had some meaning, because being located right here at Cape Henlopen at the mouth of Delaware Bay, the shipping channel located off of Cape Henlopen. And so to protect this really strategic waterway that led to Philadelphia, the industries on the Delaware, such as on the Brandywine River Valley where the DuPont mills are, Philadelphia was the largest town of the time, city of the time, still in the early 19th century. And this was a really strategic point of land to protect those assets up the Delaware River.
The British eventually came to set up a blockade here. Whereabouts did they set up as far as the relation to Lewes, and why do you think they stayed there for as long as they did?
They were probably in the vicinity of the Delaware breakwater, where the inner breakwater with the red lighthouse is today. That gives them enough it gives them enough water, it gives them the proper distance. We know that they fired anywhere from 1.25 miles to 1.5 miles to reach the town. So that puts them in a pretty good range and in a logical location. It's also close enough to the ship channel and to the Cape that they could keep an eye on what was going on in the ocean as well.
What was the impact of the bombardment on Lewes?
Well, there were certainly there were no fatalities. There were certainly casualties and injuries, but the town did sustain damage. The Cannonball House was struck. A building at the corner of 2nd and Market Streets, where Hotel Rodney is today, was actually struck and partially destroyed. There were cannonballs found in the marshes. Cannonballs overshot the town. The town did survive, obviously. It sustained a very heavy firing, but there certainly was damage here. It wasn't. Sometimes today we look back on and we kind of poke a little bit of fun at it, that the British, really missed the town and weren't very good marksmen. But considering that they were firing over 1.25 to 1.5 miles on a rolling sea with the technology they had, they did, a fairly substantial job in inflicting some pain on Lewes. Federal Congress was not providing the necessary support to defend Lewes and to defend the Delaware River. So they would actually find cannonballs that would fit their gauge of cannon and actually return the cannon fire to the British that had been fired upon the town. And we actually have a letter at the Historical Society that talks about the effective reply of the cannon fire and one of the British ships having to retreat to the Jersey side of the bay to get away from the fort here. There were thousands of troops, 2,000 to 3,000 troops that were stationed at Lewes during the war. They were encamped at Blockhouse Pond. There were forts here in town, and that certainly helps the local economy. We have soldiers who, are still have some free time, come into town, come to the taverns, need supplies. That really impacted the town and was probably a boost to the local economy. Lewes, back before the War of 1812, probably had a residency of several hundred, maybe 500, 800 people who lived here. And just about 20 years before the war, in the 1790s, the courthouse left. Lewes was the county seat, moved to Georgetown. And so a lot of the industry, the attorneys, some of the people who had to travel to Lewes were no longer coming here. So it was a fairly depressed little town. Still relied on the Delaware Bay and the maritime industries for the majority of its commerce, but when the courts leave and that activity leaves, it certainly had a big impact on the town. The bombardment occurred on April 6th and 7th in 1813, and next April we're looking forward to some commemorative events. Lectures and other activities are going on to recount the war. So it was something that whoever visited Lewes in the 19th century, there's a lot of accounts of travelers coming through Lewes, and they always refer to it as and a lot of times as an odd and quirky town. And the first thing almost everybody mentions without fail is that all the old-timers were still sitting on their porches talking about the bombardment and how Lewes had beat back the most powerful navy in the world. So it certainly left a very lasting impression.